Hi everyone and welcome to this new tutorial. Today we are going to see how to create a large scale smoke effect within 3ds Max with the plugin FumeFX. There are a number of ways you can create this plumbed smoke effects with a simple source, an object source, and particle source. In this tutorial, we're going to use particle flow to emit particles, and then a particle source to help FumeFX emitting the fluid from these particles that we've created. So the first thing is that we have to configure the timeline. I am in Europe, so I use the PAL version, 25 frames, and I want to do something like 150 frames per long. So we're good, and now we can create our scene, and by setting our project. Let's go and save it wherever we want. Let's create a new folder. Let's call it like large scale smoke effects, and here we're gonna get a title like large scale smoke effect tutorial. Yes. So now, as I mentioned before, there are different ways, and I'm going to create this with a simple particle source. So we can do this in different ways, and you have always to keep in your head what you want to do. To create a particle, we can go to Graph Editors and Particle View, or press 6 on your keyboard and not your numpad. This is very important, because if you press on numpad, nothing will happen. So press 6 on your keyboard and this window will pop up. This is the particle view. And if you don't have this kind of section here below, you can, I think, get it somewhere like in the display part, in the option part, but no matter, don't care. To create a particle system, let's go right click, new particle system, and standard flow. This will automatically create a basic particle system, so you don't have to get some knowledge. For this tutorial, if you don't know how to particle flow works, it's not so important. As you can see, now we have our particle, and by the way, to maximize the window, you can press Alt W on the keyboard. Let's modify some parameters. Let's move this 20 centimeters on the Z, and let's rotate, I think, -90 on the X-axis, because I want the particles to be like lateral on the side view. And with these effects, you can create some different scenes like sandstorm or faraway explosion. You can do basically whatever you want. Let's rename this particle flow source to particle flow emitter 01, because it's the first event that we have. And we can delete the shape and rotation, because we don't need that, considering that FumeFX will generate fluid from the particles, so we don't have to render the particles. Let's insert a delete operator above the display. This is very important. And let's start modifying some settings or parameters. Now, the first thing that we have to consider is the birth. Yeah, let's go into PF emitter 01. Let's change the logo size to about 10 centimeters, the icon type to rectangle, but first let's check the unit setup. Oh, it was centimeters. No, for this case we want generic units, so let's put this again to 10, the length and the width to maybe 35 and 35. No, maybe 60. Yes, we want a kind of large, big emitter. Now, because we have modified again the settings and the units, we need to also reposition this. Okay, now it's fine. Now, there are no particles, and let me figure out why. Maybe of the delete operator. So let's go over. Let's change the viewport to 100%, because if you keep it to 50%, basically FumeFX won't generate as much fuel, as much smoke as 100% because it will basically take that value as a reference, 50%, and will generate by that. So putting 100% is very good to emit the full fluid. Let's go to the birth. Let's put 0 as start to 100 as stop, and just for the test, let's put 2000 amount for the particles, maybe 175, but if you want, you can check, you can do 2000. And let's check subframe sampling. Now let's go to position icon, and it's perfectly fine. Let's change the speed to 50 with a variation of 50, because remember, this is a massive smoke, so it needs to be slow, and a divergence to 20 or 25, because we need the particles to have a kind of angle and not be so straight. Now let me modify the delete operator, because it is deleting all the particles. Let's do by particle age, and as you can see, we have the effects of the divergence on the particle. We have this kind of angular cone effect. Now let's go into the delete operator by particle age. Let's set let's see, the lifespan to 3 and the variation of 2. In this way, particles will die basically instantly and immediately, as you can see in the preview here. And I think we're done with the particles. Let's see our effect here. Let's save the project, and now we are ready to create the FumeFX grid and setting up for the simulation. Now if you have the plugin correctly installed in the 3ds Max, you should find the FumeFX plugin here into the create panel. Let's hit this button. Let's create a generic grid, and we are gonna edit the values now. Let's go into the modify panel, and let's first of all let's position it in the correct way. So we need a massive grid, guys. So if if your computer can handle this, fine. Otherwise, you want to scale down the emitter and everything. Let's position the grid on 3 on x minus 150, and you can consider now that we have to scale up this grid to fill the entire space. So again, this will be a massive grid with a massive simulation. So you have to be patient also for the simulation, because it will take something like 5 to 6 hours, and also the render. Now as width, let's put like 260. For the length, I think, let's say 350, 340, and for the height 140. And now let's check if everything is inside the grid. Yes, there's space. Perfect. I think this is perfect. Right. The particles are inside. The grid is massive. And let's put also the final spacing of 0.3. Now let's see. As you can see, it's 20,000 megabytes. It's too much. Sorry. It's too fucking much, actually. But if you want a perfect final simulation, I think 0.3 will work as a charm. So now, if your computer, of course, is a little bit slow, you can put something like 0.8, because consider that this is a massive grid, it will work just fine. Let's go into the create panel. Let's go into helpers and select FumeFX and get a particle source, because we are using particle flow. Now let's take this hand and pick the particle system that we've created before. Now let's go into the modify panel. Let's take the gravity vector also from the helpers menu, and let's make some changes. Basically, this helper, this modifier, will make some pressure on the smoke by pulling the gravity, and the direction is the direction of the little white point, white arrow. So let's rotate 90 on the X, and as you can see, the direction will basically put some pressure on the smoke. So let's go into the let's see, modify panel. I think let's select the FumeFX grid. Let's take the UI. Let's make sure that the output frame are matching the timeline, and you have to make sure also from the output and the rest. And let's call this like a sim for simulation. Cache tut or folder, yes, it's the same. Let's put also wavelet and post, even if we're not gonna use them. Let's make sure also in playback we have the correct frame. Let's save the project, and now let's see what we can do. Let's go to the simulation tab, and we need to change a few settings, not a lot. And if you're not familiar with this, settings, you know, there are a lot of tutorials on YouTube. I already made a FumeFX basics tutorial, but in Italian. So let's change the gravity to 0.17, the vorticity to 0.8. This will give some much more detail and turbulence in the smoke. Let's also put the turbulence on X to 0.5, the scale to 0.4. In this case, we're gonna have a lot more detail, as you can see in the preview. And let's bump up the detail to 5. Now the frames, we're gonna have 1, so every single frame FumeFX will calculate the turbulence. Now let's block on both sides the X, Y, and Z. In this case, the smoke basically will seems like it is on the floor and is emitting by something. So you know, it will be more realistic. And if you don't get my concept, you will see at the final simulation what I meant. Now let's see, for fuel, smoke, I think we don't need to change something. So let's go to render. Let's decrease the step size to 25 just to get a little bit more resolution on the render, and the render warps to 32 and 64. Let's turn off the fire because we don't need it. As I said, we are going to make a smoke effect, so no fire will be involved. Let's change the color. Oh, this is a gradient. So let's right click, go to keyless mode, and let's change the color. Let's see to something. I want a kind of black, kind of black and dark smoke. Maybe darker than this. Let's see. I think this is brighter. Yeah, it's brighter. Let's go a little bit down. Let's see. This is too dark. Maybe something like 60. Yeah, I think 60 will work fine for me, at least. Let's make sure that cut shadows and receive shadows are checked. This is because when we are going to make light, the smoke will generate some nice shadow effects, and this will be pretty cool too. So I think in the render panel we've finished, and now let's create some lights. Let's go to create light, standard light. We don't want final render or V-ray or photometric, and we'll only need 2 lights, target spot and omni light. So let's create a target spot light. Let's put it in a general position. Let's select the light. Let's go to the top view, make sure that we can see this light from all the 4 panels so that we can adjust it as we want. For these effects, I'm gonna put in some specific ways because I already made some tests, but you can position it basically wherever you want. So let's put it like something at minus 70, 50, 70 for 80, yes. And let's put this just for now at 0, 0, 0. But we're gonna change the target position later. So also we don't want this to be as low as before, so as high as before, sorry. We want to put this down, and these are the values. So minus 7048 for the X, minus 360 for the Y, and 2218 for the Z. Now we need to create, to select, sorry, the target of this light. And as I said before, we need to change its position because we want to kind of to be in the middle of the smoke and of the entire grid. So let's make sure, okay, that we have selected the target, and let's put it like minus 10. We want 10, sorry, we want into the middle of the clip of the grid, so minus 185, and I think we're good to go. Yes, let's create, let's modify first this light by checking the shadows and making this ray traced shadow, so that we'll cast some shadow on the smoke. Let's go to shadow parameters and let's check atmosphere shadows. This is important because otherwise FumeFX won't recognize it. Now let's create an omni light, and let's select the position tool because we want to move this. Let's center this view. Perfect. Alright, we want to position this, let's see, on the right for the top view, and down, because considering that my final view will be a kind of lateral, a side view, I want some shadow on the other side, so this will make some nice contrasts. Let's position this down, a lot down. So if you want the values, the X is 520, the Y is minus 4050, and the Z is 85. So as you can see, sorry, 285. This is our setup. Perfect. As for the target light, we need to check the shadows, ray trace shadows. Go to intensity, color, and attenuation, and let's decrease the multiplier to minus 0.61 to make some nice contrast, and check atmosphere shadow, so it will be recognized by FumeFX. Now let's select our grid. Let's go to object, to illumination, and let's pick this light by going to list and select these two lights. Perfect. Now let's also go to object source. We need to add our particle source and the vector, because now we are going to end this tutorial. So particle source and gravity, and let's check if everything is just fine. As you can see, FumeFX already put this in a chronological way, let's say like this. So first we have the particle source, and then the gravity. There's the daemon, the effector. Now we want a lot of variation for the radius. We wanna go and increase the velocity multiplier, so we'll have more density, and also I think we have to increase the smoke because you know, being a large scale smoke effect, we want a lot of smoke, so let's put to 5. If you want to do something like a sandstorm, for example, that the smoke won't be so dense, so let's you can keep it default of 2. Now let's use the GPUs for the preview, so it will be nice and fast. Let's save, and I think we're ready to start the simulation, and I will see you when the simulation is finished. Alright, the simulation is done, and this is the final effects. As you can see, it's pretty high res, and I have these shadows because I checked in view shadows, so the preview will seems like your render. So it's pretty damn high quality. If you want to do something like a macro shot, you need to increase a little bit more the quality, but look at this. This is gorgeous. It's beautiful. So, and now you can basically get your view, your camera position. As you can see, it's not suggested for for macro shot. In my case, maybe I want something like this. Maybe I will see later the camera position. Alright, let's talk about the render. We need an active time segment to 0 to 150. Let's select HDTV. For me it's full HD, but you can render basically wherever you want. Let's make sure the atmospherics is checked, and let's save it to our folder. Let's see, create a new folder. Let's call this sim render, and let's call this large smoke effect. Let's choose a PNG for the transparency. Let's choose save, and we want RGB 48-bit and alpha channel checked. So make sure this is your setup. Let's press OK, and I think we're ready to go. Yes, so we'll see, guys, when the render is finished, to composite this into After Effects. Alright, we are in After Effects, and I don't know why, but my my license is actually expired, so my Mirili section, it has no more license. We have imported the file into After Effects. Let's make a new composition, and as you can see, this is our final effect. Now it is 30 frames per second, and we need to change it to 25 like it was in 3ds Max. Let's change also the composition with 25 frames per second. Let's increase this to 6 seconds. Perfect. Alright, we are ready to go. Let's create, let's see. It's beautiful. It's gorgeous, guys. I don't know what to say. I hope you will like this effect too. Look at this. It is massive. Yeah, it's beautiful. Now, let's composite this a little bit. Let's create a new solid by pressing Ctrl Y. Let's make a dark gray, and this will be the background. Perfect. Let's go to our footage, and let's add a color correction, color balance. Where is here it is. Let's apply these settings. The red balance about 25. This 10, the 15, 10 minus 5. Yes, 20, 10 minus 5. Basically, this will give, as you can see, a nice sand and rock color like. So if you want to composite this on a desert scene, you can do that. Let's apply the sharpen effect. Let's increase it to make some more details in the smoke. I think something like 50 maybe will work just fine. Yeah, now we have some nice little detail, as you can see here. Oh my god, it's pretty damn good. Yeah, I like it too much. It's too beautiful. Perfect. So guys, this is the final effects. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Put a like if you did, and comment if you have some problems. We'll see you next time.